Welcome to the Connected Spirit Podcast, a space where the mystical and the human experience merge, where we explore what it really means to walk a spirit-led path. I'm Courtney Dawson, an ethical medium and mentor, and for as long as I can remember, I have felt the presence of the spirit world. But my journey hasn't been simple. It's been one of self-discovery, healing from religious and emotional trauma, navigating fear, judgment, and the loneliness that comes with embracing something the world doesn't always understand. This podcast is here to take what was once considered woo and bring it into the real lived experience of being human. Because mediumship isn't just something we do, it's who we are. Here we dive into the conversations no one else is having, breaking down misconceptions, exploring the unseen, and normalizing the journey of deep connection. We'll talk about the beauty and the struggle of being a medium. We'll laugh, we'll reflect, we'll go deep. And most importantly, we'll remember who we are, why we're here, and how spirit moves through us all. So if you've ever felt something more, if you've ever questioned the unseen, or if you're simply ready to embrace the fullness of your spiritual path, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Connected Spirit Podcast. Today I am with Nicole Newman, who is a psychic medium, spiritual teacher, and owner of Love of Every Kind. Nicole has been aware of the divine since she was a child, but she developed her skills professionally later in life after the departure of one of her sons, Avery. After intense training, countless readings and classes, and sorting through her own life experiences, she decided to start her psychic mediumship healing school, Love of Every Kind, where she offers readings, counsel, mentorship, workshops, and retreats by herself and in collaboration with other lightworkers, as she travels regularly between Maui, Hawaii, and Canada, working in both locations in person and online. Nicole stays close to her son, Avery, who is in the spirit world, and he helps her often in her work with others as they develop their mediumship. He's also a lot of fun. He continues to guide Nicole from the other side of the veil as their evolution and relationship progresses. Avery has always been a high vibration individual, and his powerful love and energy is palpable for many as he intertwines their work at Love of Every Kind. Nicole, good to have you here, friend.
Thanks for having me, Courtney. It's awesome to be on your podcast and to get to chat with you.
I love chatting with you. You're one person who is so wise and connected, and I just feel like a lot of what you say just channels through you. So let's see where our combo goes today. So
Great.
you and I were talking before about the God force energy.
Yeah.
I would love to unpack that with you today because you and I have similar philosophies when it comes to this. So when you and I were talking about the God force energy, it's been taken out of mediumship. What have you noticed has changed?
Well, I guess for me, I only know about mediumship that I've experienced, right? Over the last while. So I've been involved in it most of my life in some form or another, but really heavily for the last 10, 11 years, something like that, 12 years. So for me, I don't know that it's just out of it. I just think that a lot of society these days are really let go of the concept of God, or have decided that science is really separate from God, I guess, that there's not really the same need for religion or need for God that maybe we once had. So what I notice sometimes, and I'm always really surprised, some people just don't even believe in a God source, or they just think that we are just all spirit here and everything is, just the way it is. I don't know what other people totally think, but I've just noticed that the topic of God, the word God, the ability to talk about it as a real thing is often diminished, right? And people often don't want to have that conversation, or they scoff at it. Oh God, gosh, And I think it comes from people having lost faith, right? In life, or in their own experience, or in the world at large. I don't know. But also we haven't been trained, taught. It hasn't been part of our culture, really, in Western civilization for a long time. It is in certain groups, and families will hold it dear and continue it with their family. But for the most part, people tend to pull away from it, separate from it. And because of all the negative things that have occurred in religion, which quite frankly have occurred in all walks of life, and it isn't just religion, right? I mean, it's not like just the church has had problems with all of these terrible things. It's society at large. And perhaps it's been more sheltered and hidden and able to go under the wire in society at large. But in a church or in a community, it comes to the surface. And it would also come to the surface because there would be a need for it to come to the surface and a push from spirit for it to come to the surface to create healing, right? Just like anytime we have healing needed, it starts to come out of us and we may not enjoy it, but it starts to surface, right? And we start to have to deal with things or emotions or feelings or energy that we haven't wanted to face. I personally just think it's a natural progression of people to sort of pull away from God due to bad press and finding another way, our own superpower, or decide that we are, we're the God source. And I actually do think we are little mini creators ourselves. I really do. But I think it's perhaps foolish to think there's not a much higher power than ourselves. It's definitely not something I would. I think it's really a matter of language, right? I mean, there's so many different cultures that have traditionally been very connected into source and have used that as their guiding force in life and in their own societies. And they may just use a different language. And for whatever reason, people struggle to tie all those things together without division, right? They seem to think there's an either or at certain times. And I don't know that that's necessary. Personally, I think it's all true. And the layers of ourself and the layers of the God source is very true. And it's a very palpable energy that we're able to connect to. I interrupted my own thought there, so I'm going to go back to it. But I kind of look at mediumship. Like a lot of people don't even sit in the power anymore, right? And I'm guilty of not doing it religiously. I do it all the time, but I don't always do it as much as I was taught to by the spiritualist religion, right? And really, that's where we make our connection back into the divine is through sitting in the power, right? And if you look at different traditions, you look at Christianity and all the other different modalities that are out there, every single one of them has a way of reaching the divine or connecting into source, and it's all sitting in the power. And if you sort of read through it or look through it, it's all the same thing, expanding your light source from within, opening up, expanding it out, connecting into the divine love and becoming one with that part of ourself. And people would call it connecting into Christ consciousness or the Christ of yourself, if they were into regular Christianity religion, right? Spiritualism, we call it sitting in the power. But when you actually break down the structure of what they're asking you to do, it's all the same thing, like literally. So I don't know. Why is it not so present? Maybe we, as a culture, we get more intellectual, technological. We start to just operate in our brain more. We are using technology at a rapid rate, so it's speeding everything up to a point where we don't really have time for that sort of slow-mo connection that is elusive, etheric, not necessarily on my screen, right? And so I just think it's just a natural thing that people start to allow their mind to be occupied by other things, right? And then there's just so many shiny squirrels out there. Like it's like, oh, I'm going to go here. I'm going to, I remember teachers have taught me in the past, like Mavis would say, don't let yourself get drawn off to the shiny squirrel. Like stay the course, focus, right? Like stay in evidential and stay here and, trying to keep us on the straight and narrow a little bit, on that path of evidential mediumship without allowing yourself to go in another direction. And there's so many directions. So I don't.
Let's talk about that. Sitting in the power, that term has been used in mediumship for hundreds of years, especially since the advent of modern spiritualism. But different cultures, like you talked about, have had their own practice that is of a sitting in the power.
Yes.
And the purpose and the intent is the same thing. Different
Yep.
language, same deal.
Yep.
When we are connecting with the divine, it is rejuvenating and healing. But we're seeing a lot more people going, they're wanting instant gratification to attune to connect. But we're seeing that there's something missing in some of these people's personal development and spiritual development and the quality of the mediumship when they're not bringing that divine connection in. And I'll be honest with you, some mentors that I've sat with, they
Yeah.
never actually taught sitting in the power, they only taught meditation. So can you maybe share a little bit about like what mediumship feels like when you're not having that sacred connection, when that connection is missing from you? Our
Yes.
mediumship works through our human, but if our human and our consciousness isn't tapping into that divine consciousness, however, like you define it, God source, whatever, the light, the oneness, there's a gap there. Where do you feel like that shows up for people when they're not
I,
tapping into it?
I think how it happens, people will start to have, well, the ego's ability to dominate the mind is powerful, right? Our conscious mind, we need it. It's so there. And so if we aren't tapping into the divine and sitting in the power and expanding into source, as we start or before we start or during our experience with mediumship, we're playing with half a deck, right? And so literally our mediumship game becomes stressful, right? You start to be like, oh, and you're reaching for information and things are bloop, bloop, bloop. You start getting pieces of information coming in, but your mind is too occupied by its own stress level, perhaps, or by its desire to reach, perform, connect. You almost allow your need to make it work, your desire to reach into the spirit, to start to dominate your own thought process, perhaps, and you start
Mhm.
to feel the information come in sporadically and not cleanly, and you get half the story, right? And it's stressful. I mean, you don't feel happy, and you're worried about how this sitter is looking at you, thinking, oh boy, this is, half baked here. I need more. And you really need more. So you start to put yourself into that cycle of stress. And then you start to reach where really you need to just drop into it. Say, this is not my job, actually. I'm here for you, spirit. So you come, you do this, and I have faith. Sorry about that. I have faith in myself and faith in the spirit that you're going to support this situation. And I know I'm held by God and held by spirit. So I don't have anything to worry about. I'm just here to be in the middle, like literally, right? So be in the middle between you and you, right? Between the source, the spirit that is needing to make contact, and the sitter. And sometimes I'll put it back to the spirit. I think what also happens is the medium stops talking to the spirit, right? And so I think it's pretty common that people actually don't actually speak to the spirit and ask questions. I think they are waiting for what's coming and they're allowing the spirit to just give them what they get. And they think that spirit's not giving it to them. But in fact, we're not receptive enough because our own funnel is too restricted by other things going on in our mind, perhaps. Not that we're distracted, but because we aren't making that divine connection and because we don't have faith, I think it literally shows up in a lack of faith. I think all mediums go through this. We start to doubt our process. We start to go, gosh, is this real? Am I making this up? We start to have all these doubts. And if you look at how you're taught in religion, doubt, faith, these are two opposite forces kind of thing. And you want to hold on to your faith and not allow doubt to creep in. We actually had a conversation about this in my circle, I think yesterday, about how doubt, it's the nemesis, right? I mean, it's the part of us in our mediumship that becomes large. So for me, I haven't done a lot of stand-up demonstrations. So I can sit in front of somebody and feel totally connected and have a nice time and nice reading and really feel the divine coming forward from their person and from themselves to really help with healing. But sometimes if I stand up in front of people, I start to hear my brain going, what are you doing? This is kind of freaky, right? People are judging you, and wow, you start to have these thoughts. It's much better if you don't know anyone in front of you. I feel much better. I'm like, this is fine. It's just like normal. But when you start to allow your mind to come in and to create doubt, and it's really my mind doing that because everyone's really just wants to have a good time. They're really sitting there going, come on, bring us readings. For the most part, it's a very supportive environment to stand up. I do think that that's how it shows up. When we don't cultivate our connection to the divine, to source, and make that a priority and make our faith and our connection to spirit a priority within our heart in our life,
Mhm.
we can easily slip into doubt. We can easily slip into clutching and grabbing for pieces of information and into stress where we start to feel stress about, oh boy, I got to do this reading and I don't feel that good about it right now. I don't feel spirit near me and I've got to sit down and do this reading. I hope everything's okay. I mean, it's not real, right? Because as a medium, we are completely capable of just opening, connecting into the oneness, into the
Yeah.
source, and feeling the person come through, feeling the information come through. Whether or not we always feel the person palpably is always going to be different
Yeah.
depending on the energy between us and that person. But certainly, our own faith, open awareness, and our love and our desire to serve will bring that information forward that's needed for the client. And we're just fooling ourselves to think that we can't do it or concerned about it. And I think that's where it comes from. And it comes from competition, wanting to be
Yeah.
the best, wanting people to think you're impressive, that kind of thing is a very powerful emotion. And they're all archetypes that exist in the human experience. Everybody has access to all these different things. Depending on the level you've healed it within yourself, might
Yeah.
depend on how you're going to be triggered in certain situations. And I think doing mediumship in general is an incredibly vulnerable position to be in. And you're putting yourself out there, in a way that you can't see. This is an unseen world, and we're bringing forward healing and connection that is very real and palpable. Not everybody can accept it. Not everybody's ready for it. It's not for everyone. So we have to have a thick skin and be able to accept that a lot of people won't like what we're doing or agree with what we're doing or believe in what we're doing. And so sometimes they're sitting in front of you, and then, you might pick up on that and feel inferior or unworthy, these kinds of things. But if you've connected in properly to your own spirit and into source, and you have faith in yourself and faith in God and faith in the process. And when I say God, I just really mean like definitely the divine, the power of love. I truly
Mhm.
believe that the loving presence is a very real thing. I've experienced it many times. This is our birthright. It's who we are. It's what we are. And we come here into separation. We get our little piece of ourself comes into the body and goes, boom, there you go, have a life, right? And we're then faced with a little bit of aloneness, even though we may have spirit awareness. But certainly we start to work in a different way where the mind starts to operate our system, right? It's got to be a balance, I think. If we're able to make a balance between our intellectual system and our energetic birthright, our origin of where we come from and who we really are, then we can feel confident, held, fed, and nourished. The information just keeps coming and it's just there for us, and we're able to go for an hour or longer with somebody without feeling any drain and just allowing it to flow. When the divine starts to depart, say when the spirit starts to pull away a little bit, when the sitter is exhausted now and they're like, whoa, that was a lot. I got to just like enough, right? Because it's not natural for their system to be in that type of energy all the time. Then you start to feel it fade. And I think that's a good time to call it and say, okay, I should call it a day now on this reading. Because
Absolutely.
otherwise, if we keep trying, then we start using our own energy.
Nicole, you said something really important, and you were talking about performance and service. I
Mhm.
want to lean into that a little bit. In your experience, not just as a medium, but also as a mediumship teacher and a spiritual teacher, what happens when you see a medium approach the work as a skill to like perfect? Kind of like if they were going to college, okay, I got to learn it, I got to be able to dial this in, then
Yep.
really a service to offer. And I'm not saying that's like a free will service, but they're doing it to be of service to humanity, to help not only bring evidence of soul survival, but to also help transform the lives of the living here.
And
So the question is in your experience, when mediums are approaching mediumship development,
yep,
basically it's like a skill to perfect
right.
versus like a service to offer.
Yep.
How do you find that shows up for them? And does that
Yeah,
affect their connection to that loving presence?
I think it does. And I do understand exactly what you're talking about because I've sensed it a lot being a student in an environment like that and being a teacher in an environment like that. And I always try to bring them back to this is about you, your own evolution, your own ability to connect into source, to become more of it and less of you, less of your conscious mind. And so, when they're approaching it more from a skill set of I'm just going to learn these skills and there's a package and how long is this going to take me and what can I expect here? How long is this going to take me before I can start reading professionally, making money? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I usually would say to somebody, this is a hard road for you to approach it from. Like, if it's just about the skill set, you can develop all that. And by all means, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from developing in that way. but you're going to be missing what it is for you. A few people, that are in this, they just want to do it. They just want to do the work and they want to be the pro medium and they find it awesome and this is what they want to do. And it may be coming from a place in them of achievement, and we're taught that way. We're taught to achieve and to put out and, accomplish, right? And so I think it's natural for a lot of people to approach it from an accomplishment standpoint. I got into it because I wanted to be connected to my son, right? I didn't actually, have a desire to be this,
Mm.
professional medium or something. That was never my goal. My goal was to always be more connected to my son and for my own evolution, my own development. So I do recognize when you see that. And what I see most of all when I see that is that people are unhappy. I see that the student is unhappy. They are frustrated and they're competitive with each other. I think a lot of us go through this. It's a very natural kind of archetype to go through, this competitive nature. It's brought upon us by, our upbringing and our society
Mhm.
and the way our culture is. It takes a bit of a step back for people to look at that within themselves maybe and go, okay, why am I doing this? What am I doing here? And figure out there's more to this than me being the best medium on my street. But competition can be healthy. It gets people to try harder and to work at it. But this is something where trying harder isn't exactly the way that you're going to have a great experience. And when I saw you and Tamara on that dem the other day, I was like, you guys, you got it, right? I mean, you were just so
Oh.
smooth and easy, and you were like in
Hmm.
the flow of spirit and loving it, like really enjoying the experience.
Love and love serving spirit.
And so I think it takes a lot for people to get to that spot if they're not just naturally there with themselves somehow. And I think people that really maybe have a strong connection already to God and to themselves might get there more naturally and easier. And other people might need to be shown the way a little bit like, hey, this is another way we can approach this. Let's work through that connection and allow it to naturally come forward as it wishes to, as opposed to me deciding I'm going to go get it, right? And a lot of times, evidential mediumship is this. If you're on stage, nobody's got time to wait for something, or we think we don't, right? We start to put time limits on ourselves. Where I think if we could eliminate some of that pressure, it definitely comes more easy. But
Yeah,
uh,
definitely. I mean, there's always that pressure, but I
yeah,
find that the pressure is when we aren't letting go and letting God, right?
yes,
And when
yes,
people go, Courtney, what do you mean by God? Well, I believe that there is a creator.
yeah,
Certainly not the one that's been depicted in the Bible, like how I was raised, but there is this creator, this divine source
yeah,
that flows through all of us, that we're
yep,
a part of, that we are made in the image of.
100%.
And I find that if we can tap into that and then remember the sacredness of why we're doing this work, it bridges that gap between our soul self that already remembers inherently how to make that connection versus the mind getting in the way and like analyzing it and doubt coming in and that lack of faith that you're going to be supported and the communicator is going to come in and the evidence is going to land. Like it
Yeah.
brings the two worlds together, so to speak. Mediums are hearing you and I talk about this. They're listening and they're
Okay.
going, okay, this is starting to resonate. Nicole, what are some ways that they can begin restoring that sacred orientation, this sacred
Yeah.
connection, regardless of belief
Yep.
system or their background?
The way that I know is to sit with yourself and sit with your soul in silence. And this really needs to be done, obviously, in privacy. You don't want to be disturbed. And to really, for me, I've found it more as a deep desire and a yearning to connect with me, bring me peace. And I've experienced it at a lot of different times in my life. It's come to me on its own, but I've also had to recreate it for myself, right? So after my son died, for instance, I sat for a long time, right? And I was sitting to connect to him, right? And I just needed to surrender to the Holy Spirit. I needed to surrender
Yeah.
to my experience and to just accept what had happened, and be able to feel better because I was in so much pain, right? And so I was reaching for connection. I was alone and missing him, reaching for connection, but reaching for solace, salvation, help, right? Somehow help me. So out of desperation and out of need, I think it comes easier, and I would sit for a while and then bloop, I would just start to have these big downloads of energy that would fill me and my whole system would be blazing in light. And what I've learned to understand now that this is like, what people would call the Christed self or the higher self, or, connecting into us. And so this gave me peace of mind, expanded awareness. It didn't always come in the form of Avery, right? I just believed everything was about Avery, right? Because it just was for me, right? So it was, I would say often I would impose the feeling of desire of wanting to reach Avery. It would be more of a strong desire than trying to reach source. This isn't necessarily my goal, but it was part of it because I was aware of higher power and I knew I needed it in a big way. And so I was reaching for it with my heart with as much truth and desire really that I could muster. So pure intention, really wanting it. And when we aren't in that mode and we don't have desperation, pain, and suffering, how do we reach it then? Right? Which is what most people are faced with, right? I think that it's able to be reached through slowing the nervous system. So breath work is perfect. Slowing the nervous system, getting yourself into a system of breathing, and then allowing your energy to become your breath so that it starts to move within the body just like the breath does, right? And you're bringing it up into your upper centers, allowing it to apply pressure into your different areas of your body and brain, but allowing it to pull your energy with it. So your energy becomes more mobile. And then to really have that heartfelt desire, that emotion of, I want to know. So I want to know God. I want to, and God's a tough word. I want to know spirit, maybe, right? I want to know myself. I want to know my higher self. And by putting that out into the ether, once you've mobilized your energy, right, is very powerful. If you're doing it when you're just sitting in your brain and everything's intellectual and you're like, I want to know this, there's no emotion behind it, there's no power behind it. It's a thought that definitely has trajectory but may not have what it needs. It doesn't have the wheels to reach the bus, kind of thing. So putting the emotion behind it, allowing that to fill you. And what I've found it to be helpful is there's always resistance within the self, the ego mind is going to be wanting to remain in control. This is a real thing, right? It's natural for it to want to remain in control. It's a survival mechanism. And so you have to almost say, you know what? I'm okay to die right now, right? I'm going to let go of my life right now. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I had to do because I was so holding on to my life, my physical experience, the losses I had had. I was kind of trapped in that, you know what I mean? From the pain of it. I was a little bit held into it. And so I had to find a way to lift my energy out of my emotional body, out of that sort of space of holding and resistance, and just say, hell with it. I'm just letting go, And so it can feel like I use the word death, like I'm letting go of my life, but it's not death. It's more like death of the ego, death of the hold, of the resistance, of hanging on. I'm just gonna let go and go where I go, right? And suddenly you expand out, the pain expands out and dissipates and transmutes like energy should out into the universe. And this is like a thing that people could benefit from constantly because they get stagnated, repressed energy in their system and they don't know how to release it, right? So reaching out in this way releases it. It cleans you. It's just like part of the function, right? It's just as an automatic function. So it cleans our energy by doing that. We are able to reach higher. And if we're really lucky, our higher self is somehow going to make that connection into us and drop a big pile of energy into us. More of ourself is going to come forward. And in that space, we're able to make a more profound connection into the higher power beyond us and our guidance and other aspects of spirit, if that's our goal at the time. So I think that helps to try
Definitely.
that way. What I see so often is people are operating intellectually, right? They're just used to using the brain. Of course, I mean, like if you don't have a brain here, like the way the world is working right now, you're pretty, brain focused, right? Everything is moving at a fast rate. So your brain holds on really hard. And that is what we need to sort of step out of, perhaps, right? And stop thinking and stop letting, like as your thoughts are moving, are they coming in words? Put that away, right? And allow it to just come in thought form and emotion and a feel and a more of a fluid, right? Because the language is, again, holding us here. It's holding us into the conscious mind. So we're trying to become more of the spirit to have that experience, right? So we need to let go of the language and let go of it all. And so I call it kind of letting go of my life because I'm holding on to everything, and plus when somebody
Yeah.
dies, you feel so like, oh my gosh, like I'm very unlucky. I could drop dead at any moment. If my son just died, I'm probably next. This is how I started thinking, and you can't decide whether that's a good idea or bad. You're just like, oh.
Mhm.
So you got to let go of these things. I think when we're in our normal, everyday mediumship training, we also have to do this. And because we get so wrapped around lessons, the mechanics, how to, and this becomes the focus of all of our training, integrating it through a spiritual practice, I think, is definitely something we should do more of. Certainly, I see it when holding these 5-day workshops. I'm like, people are starting to melt down, right? Because they're working with so much energy. Not everybody, like a lot of people have a lot of stamina. They've been doing this for a long time, but a lot of people, it all starts to work on us. And then if we don't release all of that energy properly, we don't sleep well, or we're out partying at night or whatever's going on, right? We're not necessarily getting our rest. So then when we come back to the next day, to work more, it can be kind of chaotic on the system. And this can cause people to have emotions and things. So, doing more of reaching into that power, of becoming that power, of allowing that to be who we are in the training and focusing more in a spiritual way, I think is helpful. I think it's helpful.
Absolutely. And then the byproduct of all of this is that it increases your connection to spirit and your accuracy, and you're not reaching and trying. The quality of your mediumship improves exponentially because you're being filled, refueled.
I wanted to ask you too, right?
Mhm.
Because for me, when I'm like that and I'm in that space, I'm just allowing it to flow through me, and I'm not ever trying to direct the situation. I try to not direct the situation, right? Because otherwise my brain starts going, how did you die? What did you do? Blah, 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 blah. Like, I start to do the evidential checklist, which is awesome. And people really sometimes gravitate towards wanting that. However, now I'm in charge of the reading and I'm deciding what evidence is and I'm deciding what's important. And that's not really what I should be doing, potentially. I should let them decide. So I'm just trying to become more them and stay focused on them and allow them to tell the story through me. And it
Yes.
may not always come through in a pile of evidence in the way that it might be taught in certain ways. So I think we kind of might do a disservice in the training to students to expect this of them because we're then
Absolutely.
putting their mediumship in a left brain intellectual box, which it can look good. If you know what mediumship is, like you really know what mediumship is, you're like, I bet that's not what the guy wanted to say. I bet he had a story here that he wanted to share or wanted to help his, daughter with something, and we're not giving him that space. I noticed that as you were doing it the other day, you gave a lot of evidence, but you stayed in that flow, right? And you stayed in that source flow of it. And I thought it was a great balance, right?
Totally. And
Hmm.
when I was sitting in circle, I was given a checklist. It was that
Yep.
acronym, SIR, characteristics, evidence, reason for coming, tied all together.
Yep.
And I'm neurodivergent. I'm a highly sensitive person. I've had anxiety most of my life because I am a hypersensitive person. And I
Yeah.
wasn't actually in an environment where that was nurtured, understood, supported. So mediumship development helped me tremendously. But when it came to that checklist, it kept me in my active mind
Yep.
and dictating what was good evidence and what wasn't. And I remember sitting with spirit one day and they said, so you're frustrated at your mediumship because all your readings sound the same. Well, why don't you let us tell our story? And I was like, slap,
Oh,
slap, both
yeah.
cheeks. I'm
I was
like,
like,
dang.
oh,
And you know what I said, Nicole? I was like, I am so sorry. And
yep.
from that moment on,
Yep.
I love me some good evidence. Don't get me wrong. I
Yep.
love it.
Yep.
But I will not tell spirit. My only thing is, if you want to start with the message first, you have to bring the evidence after.
Yep. No,
I'm
absolutely.
all about the
Good.
message, but we need to know who is actually giving the message. We want to know the messenger.
Yep.
But I find that it actually gives a lot of freedom, though, too. There's less tension. You're in the power and you can hold it. And what I find is, things that may be considered not shiny and fancy evidence. The
Yep.
recipient is like, that's exactly them. Nobody would know that. And
Totally.
so when we stop judging the evidence and get out of the way, we allow the divine source,
Yep.
creator, those who give us the privilege to share their messages,
Yep.
to flow through us with ease. And that's what's missing. I feel like mediumship has become manufactured as opposed to experiential. What do you think?
Oh, yes. Like, yes, 100%. And we're doing a disservice to the
Yeah.
students by allowing it to go that way or encouraging it to go that way, because then they start to judge each other based on the checklist of evidence that isn't really what the spirit is asking them to do. So I
Which
think,
leads me to what
yeah.
you and I are
Oh,
working on together. So, what we've been talking about today, you guys, is something that Nicole and I deeply, deeply feel is missing in modern evidential mediumship. And Nicole, let's talk about this.
yeah.
We've got a 3-day in person retreat,
Awesome.
Crescent Beach, called The Remembering at your studio,
Yep.
literally, you guys, on the beach in
Yep.
Crescent Beach. Okay, let's talk about this retreat here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. This is a great thing for us to be presenting and to offer to people and to help them have that experience, because it's not part of mediumship training other than we will sit in the power, right? To actually focus on this as a topic and to allow it to grow and flourish and be nurtured and to expand upon and to see more of what it is, and then to see how it actually works in your readings and how you can perform it. I think is going to be a game changer. People are going to be like, wow. So many people that I deal with, when you're doing circles, there's quite a few people that don't feel the spirit or they don't feel it vibrate up against their body. It's an intellectual experience. It's in their mind, they're doing it well, but they aren't feeling it and it's uncomfortable for them. They want to feel it. They want to be more connected into the actual feel of the spirit and to know it's a real person and to feel that person and not just feel the information. So I think the remembering is going to help them do that. That's what I think we're going to be able to offer to people. And it's great. It's going to be a lot of fun to work with you and to be able to offer this with you. I'm excited about
What I
it.
love about this is it's not just mediumship tips and techniques.
Yep.
Obviously, we're going to be working mediumistically, but there's a focus that is unlike anything else that we're seeing. I truly believe that this is the missing piece when we connect to that divine source, however you define it, okay?
Hmm.
There's no judgment with that, but there is a higher power, there's a creator. And when we allow that presence to become a part of who we are, that
Hmm.
remembrance that we are part of it and it's a part of us, it shifts the way that we show up as humans. And
Yeah,
since our mediumship works through our human, the byproduct is that it enhances everything that we do with the spirit.
totally. Absolutely.
And I've seen you work with your mediumship and your energy. You and I work very, very differently. And I love when mediums work differently. I
Yep.
find it so fascinating to watch how other people work. But for
Yep.
you, there's a very unique power that you have that flows through you. Even when I
Mhm.
just sit and talk to you, I'm like, I don't think, Nicole, you know how to have a conversation without channeling.
Yeah,
It
I
just
know.
it just flows through you.
I know. It's kind of funny.
I love it. I love it.
Asked Spirit to do that like some time ago because I didn't like the way I was operating. I tend to just channel my higher self, I'm sure, is how I see it at a lot of times, is how I find myself operating. I don't always know what I'm going to say, and it just comes forward. But at the same time, this is how we operate with Spirit, right? I just allow it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
I'm really excited about what we're doing because I think it's kind of an unspoken thing that is going on. When you see somebody really doing it well, you go, oh, like, what the heck? And really, I think it is that connection into the source and allowing yourself. I mean, we're taught to be active mediumship or passive, where we're doing trance, but really, it's a combination of both. Maybe when we are a little bit passive, but not in trance, but just being passive in a certain way. This is a way to reach into that more. I always look at it like I just have to become more of you and less of me, right? Like
Mm.
just allow the spirit to become more of me. But I think when I'm in normal life channeling, like talking to you and doing my normal everyday stuff, I think it's the same. I'm trying to be more of my soul and less of my ego. my conscious mind, which not that there's anything wrong with my ego, but
I'm so excited. Enrollment is now open for our 3-day retreat. You can take a look in the show notes. It is being hosted not only on my website, there's a link, but the official enrollment for registration is on Nicole's website, Love of Every Kind. You can take a look right now. It's on the Canadian retreats. The link is in the show notes. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Nicole or myself. There is limited space. We have special pricing. There's going to be group events or group gatherings and exercises. There's going to be nature walks on the trails and the beach. This is a beautiful remembering of who we are and why we chose to step into this work as
yeah,
ethical mediums. Nicole,
yeah.
thanks so much for being on the show, and I'm really excited to do this workshop with you.
I'm very honored that we're doing this together. I think it's really a great experience, and I look forward to everybody who wants to join us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everybody. The Connected Spirit isn't just a podcast, it's a remembering of who we are, a remembering of our connection to spirit, and a remembering that we are never walking this path alone. Mediumship isn't just about speaking with spirits, it's about deepening the connection to our own spirit, to one another, and to the energy that moves through everything. So as you leave this space, ask yourself, what part of this conversation stirred something within you? What connection is spirit inviting you to strengthen? If this episode spoke to you, please share it, leave a review, and connect with me on Instagram at Medium Courtney Dawson or visit my website at mediumcourtneydawson.com. Your presence in this community matters because connection isn't just about what we seek, it's what we are. Until next time, trust your spirit, trust the unseen world, and trust that you are always, always connected.